Hello, Facebook friends. Marianne here. I wanted to respond to something that a lot of people have been sending me messages about recently, and that is regarding the recent gun shootings that have been happening across our country. And it's heartbreaking. It's horrendous. And being on the other side of the pond over here in Europe, we have been able to see quite a contrast. Lately, Joshua and I have been blessed to be exploring parts of Italy. And we've been doing what we typically do, where we go into some of the major cities and then we go into the countryside and weave back and forth. And I always feel like you really can't understand any country unless you explore both its countryside and rural areas as well as its urban big cities. And that really says a lot about the United States as well. In the United States, I tend to find that most people stick to one or the other. They really are rural and they really stick to the countryside, or they really are city people and they really stick to the city. You don't meet a whole lot of people that explore both, unless you happen to have people in your family that are hunters or people in your family that enjoy going camping. But even those going camping aren't really spending time in the rural communities. They're going off into the forest. So what the point I'm getting to with all this is, growing up, I was brought up in a house where my father, I kid you not, had, without exaggeration, probably about 25 rifles. And these things were gorgeous works of art. I am talking, the wooden guns with inlay. I mean, these were just breathtaking. And he used them. He used them all. And as a little kid, Dad would go hunting with my uncles or family or friends, and he came back and he brought quail, he brought back pigeon, he brought back duck, he brought back deer, and my mom and I would be the ones preparing all the fowl. So that meant as a little kid, my mom would wake me up and say, "Hey, come down and help me out." And it would be plucking all those feathers out, and we would enjoy a wonderful meal of quail or duck or whatnot. And I know a number of my friends these days are like, they think that's horrendous, and yet they'll order the duck or the quail off the menu. And as a kid, what this did for me is it made me really understand where my food came from. Now, I know that sounds funny, but it really had an impact on my life. And so my mom, being part Blackfoot, would say, when we would say our prayers and say grace at the table, she'd say, "Marianne, make sure you thank the animal who gave its life for you to enjoy, for you to consume, for you to survive on," whatever word you want to use. And it was similar to the year that she had me do a vegetable garden, and I was responsible for making sure everything in that little garden survived. And believe me, when I got a carrot, I was so grateful. And after that, when I went grocery shopping with my mom, I understood a little bit better the kind of energy that was put into all the salads on our table. I share all this with you because I was brought up in a family that really the Depression played a huge role in. My father with his father and my uncles, they would go hunting in Turtle Creek, bring back the duck, and that was how they had meat. And so for my dad, it was so important to him that all of his kids, myself included, would know how to hunt should one day the unfathomable happen. And once again, we were plunged into a depression. He wanted to know every child of his could go hunt for their food. And that was so important. The same part of him that would turn the water off when he would shampoo. That kind of do not waste mentality. Now, I share all that because it's important for people to understand what we call gun culture in the South. I think there's a lot of lumping things together. And coming from a family where hunting is still a big deal, I have one cousin, my cousin Jody, and he will go hunt for alligator. And he will refuse to use a gun because he says it's unfair to the alligator. He will go hunt with a knife. And he says, basically an alligator has knives in its mouth, so it's only fair if he fights the same level. I have a nephew, Clark, who goes and he hunts with a hawk, and he will go and only shoot with a bow and arrow. And he says that's the only way it's fair, because if he uses a gun, it's not fair to the animal. It's more fair if he uses a bow and arrow. So, the point is that there's different philosophies. And I have friends of ours, Quinn Cho and her incredible husband, Wes. Wes will go and hunt with a bow and arrow and has taught his daughters to do the same. And it's part of his culture, is part Native American. These are stories and things that are part of the culture of the American South. And they cross over with so many other factors. But here's the thing. Every one of those amazing hunters that is good enough to aim without a gun using a bow and arrow, or every one of those hunters that can hunt with a knife, they got there because they got so good with a gun that it was unfair, and they don't see it as sportsmanlike. So sportsmanship of shooting and hunting means that you should be able to get it with one bullet. If you need a barrage of bullets, then that means that when you get the meat, you're going to be biting through stuff that could break your teeth. And it means basically that you're a really piss poor shot. So people that try and brag that they have guns that can shoot a whole volley of bullets really, really fast, and they say they're taking that to hunt a deer, it's really kind of ridiculous, because they might as well be bragging that they're a terrible shot. I mean, and I'm saying this coming from a family that is really big on hunting. So putting all that in perspective, when you see people that have guns that can shoot multiple bullets in a very fast round, it's designed for one thing. Let's be honest. It's designed to kill people. So if you own that, you are essentially asserting that you want to be able to kill a human being. Now, I think that we need to be able to separate those facts and understand what it means to be a hunter and what that Southern hunting culture is versus people that want to have guns designed for the sole purpose of killing other human beings. You know, this issue is really deep in my family. And I've shared some of the things with some of you before about my mom's bipolar, and I've shared some of the things with you all before about her manic depression. Now, her having, bipolar manic depression put her a little bit more close to, unfortunately, falling into having issues than the next person. And what that meant was that when she was 6 years old and saw her father shot in front of her face on her 6th birthday, she got a split personality. And that is something that created, through PTSD, issues that really came back again and again and again and again through the ages, down to the point where my head was being bashed into a wall. And that was very painful, physically and emotionally. And now I love my mom deeply, and I understand, of course, all this was heavy stuff that she carried over, and she did the best she could with me. But the reason why I'm sharing that is that there is more than one victim. While certainly I didn't suffer death, thankfully, from what happened, what she witnessed her father have caused such a horrible effect on her life that it caused her to be abusive to me, her child. This is what the American gun culture, shooting people in front of other people, does. So when we see things like what we have, down in Texas, and more than one happened, I was reading a friend of mine was saying that another shooting had happened at a store outside of Dallas. It didn't get the news because, understandably, the shooting at the school got everybody's attention. But this stuff happens way too often, and we treat it as if they're one-offs. But the truth is that it's never a one-off, and the PTSD will continue from generation to generation to generation. Now, my mom did something that I don't think I would have the strength to do. She forgave the people that shot her father. And I hope that in time our nation can move forward with that. But we can't unless we stop talking about hunting culture and gun culture as the same thing. We need to be honest. They're